I'm Kiyan.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where we're not a little drunk, we're a little dead. Because this week we watched Assignment 5, a.k.a. Dr. McD Must Die.
Written by Don Houghton, however you pronounce that, and Anthony Reed.
Directed by Shauna Reardon.
And aired from August 11th to August 26th, 1981.
Yeah, Don Houghton and Anthony Reed, two Doctor Who veterans.
Yeah, what did Don... What did Don write? Oh, he wrote Inferno.
And The Mind of Evil.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah.
So, and Anthony Reed obviously was script editor. So
yeah, for a minute.
For one season. It was.
Was it just
one?
2
seasons? 2 seasons. Yeah, because it was Hinchcliffe and Holmes, and then it was Williams and Holmes, and then it was Williams and Reed, and then it was Williams and Adams, and then it was J&T. And
I'm surprised you kept that straight in your head. I don't think I ever had it straight, even when we were in that, even when we were in those periods.
We did. I mean, the only reason is because we did just watch like Underworld, so I had to know.
Yeah, for Trust Your Doctor, a Doctor Who podcast, which is a Doctor Who podcast that we do. Check that out.
Wow. Wow. Shocking.
Anyway, Dr. McD Must Die. I have to say, I know you, because you mentioned a couple weeks ago that this was apparently, people have noted that this fan-made title spoiled the episode. I don't consider it too big of a spoiler, to be honest, now having watched the episode.
I mean, it spoils like the twist to episode 4 or 5 when they realize that Dr. McD must die.
I think it's pretty, the way it's all done in episode 1 is this going back to the past thing, and the fact that McD was dead and now he's not is a bad thing that they're going to have to fix. So I didn't find it to be too big of a twist or a shock.
I guess. I mean, it kind of spoils that Dr. McD must show up at some point in the story, because he doesn't show up in episode 1.
Yeah, I guess.
This is the only assignment, shall we say, or serial for Sapphire and Steel not written by series creator P.J. Hammond.
Yeah, and, maybe there should have been more not written by him.
Maybe, but it is kind of centrally evident that Don Houghton and Anthony Reed have even less of an idea of what Sapphire and Steel do than P.J. Hammond even did, because in the story they're just bumbling their way through the whole story, basically.
Well, I really liked the unintentional humor of this assignment, but it's actually interesting because this is the one story that gives us more. I know I said this last week, but this is actually true again this week. This gives us more detail about Sapphire and Steel than any other previous story.
Yeah, it also introduces the very strange turn of fate that they can just, I guess, deputize new elementals whenever they want and give them the power to telepathically communicate with them just out of hand.
So did that indicate to you that Sapphire and Steel were once human and were given that power, their powers? Or do you think they just have the ability?
I had that thought briefly, and then I discarded it because I was like, does it matter? No.
Yeah, I don't think that that's the case. And again, we can't really know. But there's another weird thing. Now that we're on this topic, might as well just talk about it here. There's a line in this where I think it's Steel, must be Steel actually. It goes he says something along the lines of come with me, Sapphire. We're gonna need your feminine wiles or whatever he says. But in my so. Maybe this is just me, but I didn't even think that gender applied to whatever Sapphire and Steel are. I thought they just assumed these forms, Because we get in the little intro when they're naming all the different elements, and we just see all the elements, just little orbs. So I thought that was their true form or whatever.
The form?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was just a visual representation of the element for the audience's benefit.
Maybe. I don't know, but I always up until now I didn't really think that Sapphire and Steel had a gender or a sex. I thought they were just like beings that didn't have a gender or a sex.
I mean, they still could be.
Yeah, they
still
could
be.
Yeah, they could.
And maybe he just needs Sapphire's femininity as presented through this form that she's taken. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Steel doesn't do jack in this in this serial.
And it was great. It was great, though.
Sapphire is the one doing everything this week.
But Steel gets to make all the snarky comments.
My favorite part of this episode is still when Steel doesn't remember his name, and we'll get there. I don't want to spoil that moment out of context.
Yeah. It's actually, I didn't actually make this connection, but now that you bring it up, yeah, it is Sapphire doing everything, but outwardly it's Steel doing everything. Like, they think he's the investigator guy, and, and such.
Yeah. Well, it's, maybe it's playing into the sexism of the 1930s/80s.
Maybe,
well,
yeah.
because we should mention that the episode opens and it's very clearly like 1980 because there's like an electronic door and everything, but a guy turns to a calendar and he goes, June 21st, 1930, the summer solstice. And that's the first kind of indication that something's weird.
Right. So we get, I was a little confused. The beginning of this kind of just drops you into it, but I liked it. I liked how it did that.
Yeah, there's a dinner party happening tonight at the Mulreen residence.
Yeah.
We have the players are Lord Mulreen and Emma Mulreen. We have Felicity McD. We have Felix Harborer, Howard McD, Annabelle Harborer, Greville, Dr. George McD, who shows up in episode 2, Tony Purnell, Anne Shaw, and Veronica Bellini. So they all kind of arrive in pairs. So Emma Mulreen and the Lord Mulreen they own the house, so they're the ones throwing the party. I believe Felicity is already there at the start of the story, and she's mingling with the Mulreens and was like, "Whoa, who did you invite to the party?" and what's going on? So Felix and Annabelle show up. Greville is the butler for the house.
Right. There's one, before anyone shows up though, there's one like key scene where Mulreen goes into his little office thing, which is apparently built into the house, which he had built into the house. And he talks to, was this Anna, whatever her name was, his employee.
No, this is Anne.
Yeah, Anne.
Okay, it's confusing because there's Annabelle and Anne.
Yeah.
So the secretary is Anne, and Annabelle is Felix's wife.
Yeah, so he goes into his little office thing, and he tells Anne that there's going to be this party and that he doesn't want to break from the 1930s theme of the party, so he doesn't want her to open the door. But he forgets to take the remote control door opening thing with him.
Yeah, because he built a door that can only be opened by remote control. The fool.
And was, I guess, apparently okay with locking his secretary, employee, worker, whoever she is, like, in there. And they kind of...
Yeah, because if he had taken the thing, then she would be stuck there. Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
And they bring this up in the dialogue. She just brushes it off as like, yeah, I was going to work all weekend anyway, so it's okay. So yeah, Mulreen not really considering employee like rights or like any form of I don't know what you would call it, humanely treating his employees.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, he's definitely not endearing himself to the audience. Right?
No, and we're gonna learn. God, I'm tired.
We're
gonna learn sooner or later that none of these characters are good people.
Nope. The only one who's like even who is vaguely blameless is Felicity.
No.
Actually, I take that back. The only one who's blameless is Anne, who is the secretary, who's just like, I'm gonna work, and is the dutiful employee and gets no thanks for it. Like she does nothing bad the whole
But
story either. She just works on the
But,
computer.
I don't know, having an affair with an employee of the guy you work for seems like a recipe for disaster.
Does she do that?
Yeah, she's seeing Tony, who works at the bank
Right.
that, Maureen's, conglomerate or whatever it is he
I mean,
owns.
she's not the one having the affair. Tony's the one having the
Yeah,
affair.
exactly. Tony's the one having the affair, but she's part of it.
But does she know? Like, does she know that Tony's
Yeah.
seeing Veronica?
Yeah, because there's that scene where Sapphire like has the vision of them talking about it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We're really into like this family like these family politics, and this episode does a good job making you interested in like this pseudo Edwardian like I guess it's Georgian because it's King George the whatever on the throne at this point who abdicates the throne, I think. The only one I would say is pretty totally blameless is
It's Greville, the butler.
I guess him too. I was gonna say the first girl who gets killed.
Veronica.
Yeah, Veronica. She doesn't really do anything bad or wrong. I think.
Well, Sapphire calls her an idiot. So
Yeah, but that's
Not
not
to-
a crime.
might be a crime on Sapphire's part. Well, yeah. So Emma, the Lord, and Felicity are all waiting around for people to show up, and actually, I think Howard's there at the start too. Actually, and so they're having memory problems, but so they can't. They're having memory problems, which is later revealed to be part of the whole time shenanigans. But the memory problems are convenient because they don't quite exactly remember who they invited, which is what allows Sapphire and Steel to kind of weasel their way into this party.
Right.
Because the doorbell rings and they're like, "Oh, that's got to be Tony and Veronica." Turns out it's Sapphire and Steel, pretending to be. Now I have their names written down here somewhere.
Miles Cavendish and something else Cavendish.
Yeah, the Cavendishes.
Yeah.
And so they have arrived, and Felicity's like, "Did you invite them?" And Emma's like, "I don't know. I thought the Lord Maureen, like my husband, sent out the invites." And he's like, "I thought you sent out the invites." So they're like forgetting everything. Sapphire's hair is much better than last week's.
But she's still wearing something new, which we can discuss later on. And for once, Steel is going to have his own little segment for costumes as well.
Ah, yes, Steel. Well, so they go to their room, Sapphire and Steel, and they're kind of discussing like something weird's going on here, and they don't know what person the like time fracture is inhabiting, so they have to figure it out. Like that's the mystery for the week, is they have to figure out who's the odd man out, basically, or woman.
Yeah, and I think they drop the bit of info here, if it's not already clear, that like something is taking them back to the 1930s. Mm-hmm. And it's doing it based around this 1930s themed party that they were conveniently having.
Yeah, because there's this very weird scene that's the end of part 1 of episode 1 where I think Howard puts something on and the Lord is like, "Ah, yes, good music," and Howard's like, "What's wrong with the tape?" And the Lord is like, "What tape?" End of part 1. Like, wow, what a thrilling cliffhanger. What tape? Like, this blew my mind when it happened. I sat there for 10 minutes going, what tape? Like, what? Obviously, I'm joking. This is literally the most benign cliffhanger in the whole story.
Yeah, so we don't ever learn Maureen's first name, right? Like, it's always just Maureen.
Yeah, I believe so.
One other thing we should mention is that this is all commemorating the 50th anniversary of his company. And most of the people at the party are his employees.
Yeah. His company that, I guess, he's lived in this house for 50 years and has, like, always kind of worked in this house, which is for 50 years, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it is kind of weird for, like, a company started in the 30s. He also, like, he must be, like, between 70 and 80.
Yeah, he doesn't look it. He aged very well.
Yeah. But we get a little bit more. I don't necessarily remember what order this is all in, but we get a little more backstory. So Maureen obviously founded the Maureen like company or whatever, but he did it with George McD, who was his partner. That's what
And
we
that's
get.
why Felicity's there.
Right. That's what we get for now. But they're all. He has a big, painting of George on the wall. So at this point, think that like these two were great friends and they got along well enough to start this like huge company or whatever. And we don't really know what McDee's role in all of this was yet.
Yeah, kind of weird in hindsight. He's just got a big painting of his friend hanging on the wall. But
yeah, but I guess makes sense when you figure out that he actually used McD and like basically forced him to sign over everything he'd ever done and everything he would ever do. Or not forced, coerced. Or not coerced, I don't even know. I don't know if there's a word to describe, but we'll get there in episode 6.
Shout out to Emma here, just like gold digging. Because she, I believe, wasn't married to the Lord Mulreen in 1930, but she is now. She's Emma Mulreen. So at some point in there, she was like,
No, she's his sister.
Is she?
Yeah,
I thought she was married to him.
I did too until episode 6, and they reveal in episode 6 that she's his sister because
I must have missed that line completely.
It's in one line where George goes like, he said you were fine with me sleeping with your sister before we started this company, and now you're not.
I totally missed that line.
Yeah. I thought the same thing that you did up until that line.
Wow. Anyway, so Sapphire and Steel get changed. Steel grows a mustache for some reason. Nobody at the party notices that he's grown a mustache since walking in the door.
Yeah.
They start gossiping telepathically, which is hilarious when Tony and Veronica come in because Sapphire is like, because I guess Sapphire is like reading their history or whatever, and she's like, yes, Veronica, she's a bit dumb, and then she's like, Tony, he's seeing someone else, but he pretends to love her, but she really loves him. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, that was one of the best parts of this story, was getting Sapphire's little like commentary on everyone.
Also, the fact that Steel is so hilariously out of place at this party because they're like pour drinks, and he's just standing there with, I think, Howard, and Sapphire's like, he can't drink yet, and Steel's like, why not? Like, why not? And Sapphire's like, you gotta say chin chin, and he's like, oh, chin chin, and then Howard's like, chin chin, and he drinks like his entire glass of champagne.
Yeah, Steel's cluelessness was also great.
Just goes to show that Steel has no grasp on social interactions.
Yeah.
So Sapphire like astral projects herself to go investigate the office. And that's how episode 1 ends, because she vanishes and Steel's like, Sapphire?
Yeah, she sort of goes up in flames. There's like probably one of the most detailed effects Sapphire and Steel has ever given us, like some hot rod flames appear on the screen.
I want to know, like, this is clearly filmed inside a house, but I want to know if it was an actual house or if they built a really complex set for this.
I want to say it was a set, because didn't we read a few weeks ago that there's only one non-set thing used for Sapphire and Steel, which was the roof of ATV?
I mean, it probably was a set. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Probably was.
Well, so I mixed up the order of events because Tony actually arrives in episode 2. So the scene with Sapphire is near the end of episode 2 and not episode 1. The reason why I note that Tony and Veronica arrive in episode 2 is because when Tony arrives, he's like, I want to plug in my electric razor. And Greville's like, sorry, what is electricity? Like, that's pretty dangerous, isn't it? And Tony's like, he is taking this joke too far. Like, it's not actually 1930.
And he tries placing a call to like someone, but he can't do it. His dad, because he doesn't like know how to use the operator system that you would have had to use in 1930.
He doesn't know the exchange, I think.
Yeah, something like that. What was he even like planning on shaving anyway? I mean, his face is like smooth as a baby. You're just gonna like shave his head right before the party?
They just, they just needed a reason to show that electricity is a thing that like you can't use for an electric
Yeah.
razor, but you can for telephones.
Yep.
So everyone's mingling at the party, and then the doorbell rings, and they're like, "But everyone's here." Open the door. Enter who else but The Rock, not the George McD.
Right.
The dead George McD, we should add. He's dead in 1980.
Yeah. And so their reactions here are a little bit strange. They kind of freak out, but not really to the extent that you think they would.
That's because they're half in 1930, so... Yep. Although there is a little bit of an anachronism, because in Tony's room, there's a zoom in and then a spotlight on a newspaper, and the date is 1929.
I think it's like a phone book or something.
1930? Yeah, with phone book, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Would it be like rare to have a phone book from the previous year? Maybe, I don't know. And I'm pretty sure it was a phone book, so.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it was a phone book.
But yeah, anyway, George McD is back, and he's like, "So, what's going on?" And Felicity, comes up to him, and she's like, "Whoa, it's George." And he's like, "Who are you?" He doesn't recognize her.
And she's like, oh God, how can you not recognize me? And George also thinks that Howard is someone named Malcolm, who we never meet, but was apparently George McD's son, who is Howard's father.
Right. So Howard is George McD's grandson.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, there's a fog setting in outside. And inside, because we see a shot of it like leaking in through the door. I think at this point, George is just like, yeah, this is just way too overwhelming. So he just leaves.
He goes to his lab, which is where the office is now. The door has changed into the 1930s door, so that the office has actually turned into his lab. So he goes into his lab.
Right.
Apparently, George died on the 22nd of June, 1930, which is the day after the summer solstice.
Right.
So, anyway, Felicity goes and changes, and then I think Emma decides they're going to play sardines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I didn't realize was a game that existed in 1930. Let alone was a game that old people played at parties.
Yeah, but this is
anyway, so...
this is like, I don't know, this is some... You've read, like, Oscar Wilde's plays and, like, the importance of being earnest and stuff like that, right? And, like, others... Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, like, that type of thing where it's, like, these very rich, people who have a lot of time on their hands and need to spend their days filled with, like, figuring out how to entertain themselves.
Well, they got to do something while they wait for dinner.
Well, I thought you were going to say, well, they wait for death.
Death comes at the end. Well, so if you don't know how to play sardines, it's basically hide and go seek, but there's one person who hides and everybody seeks, so it's kind of like reverse hide and go seek. And once you find the person hiding, you have to join them in the hiding place, which is why it's called sardines, because if they choose like a really cramped hiding space, then like you just all cram yourselves in there like sardines. And when they're talking about this, who is it? I think Howard is like, well, I don't want to play. And Emma says something like, oh, well, you definitely wanted to play when, what's her name was, he names some young woman that I guess he has a thing for. He's like, you definitely wanted to play when she was playing. And he's like, okay, fine.
Steele does something similar where he like telepathically asks Sapphire, like, so do we have to join this? And she's like, yes, of course.
She's like, we need to keep up our cover. And then Steele's like, well, I'm just going to go investigate the office. Well, the other office.
The library.
Not like the work office. Yeah, the library.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm going to use this as an excuse to investigate the library.
Yeah, because that comes up later. It's the laboratory versus the library. Throws him off a little bit later. So he does that. He goes and investigates the books in the library. while everyone else is playing. He finds there was three
Cheap fiction.
cheap fiction, romance novels, and some science books. Kind of
What an eclectic collection.
grab bag there.
My dude.
Just add in comic books, and that's basically what all the characters at the beginning of Doctor Who, or was it the first? Now I'm forgetting. Was it the first one or the second one? The first Peter Cushing movie, or the second one, where it starts with them reading all the books? Well, whatever.
First
one, yeah.
It's the first one.
Yeah.
So they're playing sardines, and Annabelle, I think, is she opens a cupboard, and boom, who should fall out but Veronica? This was really funny. This is unintentionally funny because she puts Veronica back in the cupboard and closes the door, but she closes it on Veronica's arm, so Veronica's arm is just caught in the door, and I'm like, oh god, everything about this is a disaster.
Yeah, she obviously she doesn't know what she's looking at as a dead body, but like if you kind of view it as her knowing, it's like she opens the door and she's like, "Oh, I'll just put this back in here and leave."
Well, then so episode 3 begins with the same thing, and then there's another there's multiple unintentionally hilarious things about this scene actually, because Annabelle goes to get everybody and brings them in, and I think Emma's like, oh, like, what's going on? And she opens the closet, okay, and Veronica falls, and there's this, just go back and watch this 10 seconds, because there's this hilarious slap sound effect as she hits the ground. There's like a slapping noise when she hits the ground, and it's just unintentionally hilarious.
Wow. Well, you know what else is unintentionally hilarious is what happens right after that, because Emma goes like, so is she like pretending? And there's like literally a knife sticking out of her back with blood pooling out of it. Blood pooling out of the wound, I should say, not the knife. But yeah. And then Maureen like gets in closer and he's like, yeah, let me investigate as to whether this is like all a big joke or not. And he pulls out the knife, and it's not. She's dead.
He pulls out the knife, which is also the worst thing you can do if you've been stabbed.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
So Maureen goes, well, hope everyone's prepared to have an alibi for the last 10 to 20 minutes.
And everyone's like, no, we were playing sardines. None of us were together.
But this is also an important line because it's where I think the characters themselves start to realize that there's something wrong with their memories.
Yeah. So, I think it's Emma or Maureen is like interrogating everyone and is like asking all of their names and where they were. And this is another hilarious scene because he gets to Steele, and Steele, like, you can see him panic, and you can just telepathically goes, "What, Sapphire? What's my name?"
Another. I guess we're on a roll here. Another unintentionally hilarious scene is, maybe not hilarious, but at least chuckle-worthy, is they throw in a classic, like, you think this is a movie type line, like, in this, where, I forget who says it, but someone's like, this is real life, not a murder mystery, like, TV show or something along those lines. So just great, classic line to throw in.
Of course. There's another unintentionally hilarious, we're really on a roll here, where they now try to like open the window, but it won't open, or the door to somewhere. I can't remember
They
where
just
now.
want to leave. They basically are like, so let's just get the hell out of this house. And they try and open the front door, and it's locked. But there's fog like coming in nonstop from somewhere.
Well, they decide to break open the window with a chair, and this is hilarious point of view shot from the point of view of the window, where they're trying to smash it with a chair, and the chair just disintegrates in the guy's hand, and he's like,
Yeah, I think it was Greville, right? Poor Greville.
Yeah, I believe so.
Or no, it wasn't. It was Howard.
Felix? Howard.
I think. Pretty sure.
So this is when Sapphire has that scene you mentioned earlier where we find out that Anne and Tony are having a thing because she like... This is actually really well done, I think. Special effects where Sapphire goes back in time and she's watching this argument take place. And she's like, oh, Tony and Veronica are arguing. But oh wait, no, they're gonna kiss. No, they're not kissing. Oh, like Tony's leaving. Oh, here comes Anne, and now they're arguing, and she's jealous of Veronica. So done very well, I think. The special effects are cool because Tony, Veronica, and Anne are like they look like ghosts. They're like bright blue and they're semi-transparent.
Yeah, it looked good.
Translucent, I guess, is the word actually.
What is it?
Translucent.
Oh, yeah.
I said semi-transparent.
Yeah, I mean, it all looked good. I didn't pay particular attention to it, but it looked good.
So
at this point, Sapphire and Steel have discovered some stuff from reading some of the books. Steel, I think, discovers that the house is built on a ley line, which,
yeah, I was like, is this a crossover with Children of the Stones?
Well, Children of the Stones didn't invent ley lines. Ley lines are like a real concept. I don't know if they're actually a real thing, but they're a real concept in the real world.
In the real world.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like, that's like in our world, people talk about like ley lines, and I don't know if they are real, but Steel explains that they're like lines of where what's it called, geological like magnetism is strong or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like Emma or Felicity's like, I think birds navigate by them. Which I don't know the veracity of that statement.
Yeah, neither do I. Something to look up, I guess.
Put it in the show notes.
Yep.
So this is when I think Sapphire explains to Steel how George McD was when he died, he was working on a vaccine for her virus that was rampant across the country.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is when they kind of start to piece together what this, like, existence that's trying to change the course of history is doing. It basically wants to wipe out humanity by changing the events of the summer solstice in 1930 in order for McD to live and spread the virus.
Yeah, well, they don't necessarily know they want the thing wants McD to live yet, but Sapphire does mention that if McD had lived, the day after he died, there would be an accident in his lab that would release world-ending bacteria, basically, because he's developing the virus using genetic engineering by modifying bacteria. Which is, I'm sure there's a biologist or an epidemiologist out there like cringing in their seat as we explain this, but anyway.
I mean, I don't think you need to like even have specific knowledge. I don't think it's possible to modify a bacteria into a virus. Like, they're two different things, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing is that Sapphire says that he's going to release a world-ending virus, but then she says that the accident happens to the bacteria because he's using the bacteria to generate a vaccine for the virus, and it's like, Sapphire, once. So, what?
That's the thing too of like, I know this is a tangent, but like right now, I think a lot of people are using antibacterial wipes when really what's going down is a virus. So
yeah, but I think there's a thing where the protective outer layer of the virus can be broken down by like alcohol, which antibacterial wipes have isopropyl alcohol in.
Is there such thing as like an antiviral wipe? Like,
I suppose we could look it up. Antiviral wipe. Wow, okay, that's...
You're probably just going to get like scams of like, buy this now to like delete COVID-19 from your life.
Charlie Brooker's antiviral wipe TV program. Oh, well, if I go to shopping, I just get Clorox disinfecting wipes, so... Huh. Wow, that's a bucket. That's a 700 bucket of disinfecting wipes. Wow. Okay. Well, that's enough of that. But that's also why they recommend you wash your hands for specifically longer than 20 seconds, because in warm water, 20 seconds is about how long it takes for the viral outer layer, the protein outer layer of the virus to break down. So. Whoopee. Living in times of a pandemic. You learn all this epidemiology.
Anyway, if whatever's trying to change the past is able to change the past, humanity will be wiped out.
Yeah, this is apparently the only episode of Sapphire and Steel that threatens the entirety of humanity. And this one website I was looking at was like, that's probably because it was written by Anthony Reid and Don Houghton, who wrote Doctor Who scripts where a whole bunch of people were threatened. The entirety of humanity was threatened.
Yeah. It hasn't really been Sapphire and Steel's prerogative to care
Save the
about
world.
life. But I think this is done well where it's like it coincides just randomly with their need to amend time. And they're basically just saving humanity in the process of doing that. They're not doing it out of like, any humanitarian thing they might have in their hearts.
Right. Yeah, there's on the topic of Sapphire and Steel saving the day, there's a line when they first enter where they're like, the time distortion already knows about us, and Steel says something like it always does, like it always knows before we arrive about us. Which I thought was an interesting line.
Yeah, and it actually comes into play here because it turns out that Veronica's body has disappeared.
Yeah. It's just gone.
Right.
Which they all think is very suspicious, because they go to open the closet and everyone's like, do we have to look again? And my notes were like, well, you don't have to look if you like don't want to look. But anyway.
But there's not too much time to discuss any of that because Emma then calls them all in for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Which is apparently more important than discussing the, murder that just took place.
That's because it is more important. Kiyan.
Right. How could I forget?
Dinner first. Everything else later.
Well, hey, once they get out of the house, they can just dump the body into the river. Like that sign from
No dumping
Dalek
bodies.
Invasion of Earth.
Oh, what an obscure reference.
Well, it's been coming up a lot again lately for some reason. I don't know why, but people have been quoting that sign recently.
Whack. That's whack. So, Tony dies.
Yeah, so right before dinner, Tony,
Blows his
turns
brains
out,
out.
is still alive because we actually skipped the scene where something attacks Tony and we think he's dead.
Well, because he goes, you. So, like, he recognizes whoever's coming into the room to attack him.
Right. But he's not dead. He was just hiding behind some curtains. And he calls in Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Miles. But before he
Miles
can do
Cavendish.
that... Right. But before Steel can show up, there's a gunshot and they go into the dining room and it turns out that it was Felicity in the dining room with a gun. No, I'm just kidding.
If you've never watched Clue, the movie from the 80s, it's actually a very funny, well done movie. Who done it? It's got 3 different endings, so.
Huh. Yeah, I should watch that.
It's very interesting from a movie making standpoint, because when it was released, your theater had a 50-50 chance of getting one of 2 different endings, which have different perpetrators of the crime. And then when they released it on DVD, they released the quote true ending unquote. It's on Amazon for $4. The Amazon version shows you all 3 endings in a row. So it shows you the first ending, and then it goes, that's how it could have happened, but what about this? And then you see the second ending, and then it goes, but this is what actually happened, and then you see the actual ending. It's very interesting.
Huh. Yeah, I've played the board game, one of the few that I have played.
Board game is pretty wild too, let's be honest.
Yeah, some of those character names, Colonel Mustard.
Colonel Mustard.
And I forget all the other ones because none of them were as stand
There's
out.
Professor Plum.
Oh yeah.
There's Professor Plum. There's Miss Scarlet. There's Miss Peacock. I only remember these because this is their names in the movie too. So
yeah.
Christopher Lloyd's in the movie. Anyway, moving on.
Huh. So they still don't have time to discuss Tony's apparent death because, again, they have to eat dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Dinner tonight's going to be a national disaster.
Or a worldwide disaster if the virus has anything to say about it.
Which it does.
It does, yeah. One thing they find out here is that the gun was personally engraved with McDee's name. We still at this point have seen nothing of George McD since he disappeared at the beginning, which as a viewer I thought was a little odd.
He showed up, he rocked the party, then he went into his lab. He comes out for dinner, though, in episode 4.
Oh, right.
There's a funny line I wrote down where somebody says, nobody takes guns into dining rooms. because Tony kills himself, unquote, himself in the dining room, and then, like, Emma or Felicity's like, that's absurd. Like, nobody takes guns into dining rooms.
Yeah, that's the thing that stands out and is wrong to you here.
Well, just Emma, I think it's just so, like, oblivious for the whole story, Emma, because then, like, so they're all in the dining room, and they're eating dinner, and they're like, well, if we all keep each other in sight, then, like, nobody else will be able to die, which is like a whodunit. This is like a trope. Like, if you go to a house, they tell you somebody's going to die, then you're all like, oh, well, if we all stay at the table, we all have each other in view for the entire night, then none of us can die, right?
Right.
Not always true. Turns out. Also, we've got to mention that the before dinner, actually, they're like discussing motives for Tony to be killed, and turns out Howard was blackmailing Tony. So apparently that means Howard might kill Tony. Like, these people don't seem to realize that if he kills Tony, he loses his source of income. But anyway.
Yeah, so, because apparently Tony was embezzling funds from the bank that he worked at.
Howard was aware of it.
Also getting it on with Maureen's secretary, which isn't necessarily, like, illegal or even necessarily bad, but is part of this nonetheless.
I mean, it's just one of the many questionable decisions he's made. It's bad because he's dating Veronica. Like, if he was just dating Anne, like, we wouldn't care. But because he's ostensibly dating Veronica, he's cheating on her with Anne, and that's what makes it bad.
Yeah, but it's also like this, 2 employees of the same company.
Look, plenty of people date within the company. I mean, it's not recommended typically because, like, if it ends badly, well, then,
But it turns out that, death is still afoot because they're passing around a little drink thing, and Howard decanter. Howard takes a sip and dies.
And this is what I mean by Emma just being completely oblivious, because he falls over and she goes, oh, do you think he's drunk? Oh my god. And Felix is like, no, I think he's a little dead, Emma.
Well, it all makes sense in the end, but, like, yeah, in the moment, it's like, what the hell, Emma?
George McD, I thought, was hilarious because the actor's putting on, like, a Scottish accent that sounds a lot like a Walmart version of Sean Connery.
Wow. Yeah, he decides to just, like, leave again.
He's like, this death, too much for your boy. McD out.
And he goes through the locked door because I think it was, not Veronica, Annabelle makes a particular point of locking them all in, but McD just completely ignores that.
Yep.
And is able to open the door and leave.
Throughout all of this, every time someone dies, although not when Howard dies, someone goes, and then there were, and then there were 9, and then there were 8, which pretty sure is a reference to the Agatha Christie novel. And then there were none, originally published as not a name I can say publicly, then republished as 10 Little Indians, and then republished as and then there were none, as they made it increasingly less racist over the years. But basically, that's the story about 10 people who go to an island, who get invited to an island, and they all slowly get killed off one by one, like is happening here.
Yeah. So it turns out that, so first of all, Annabelle and Felix go with everyone else to just go have fun or whatever. And
have fun playing cards.
Yeah. Well, Annabelle gets electrocuted.
Yeah.
Unexpected. Like, this was funny just because of how unexpected it was. Maureen and Felicity and the rest of them are all discussing amongst themselves, but they've been so taken in by, like, the 1930s that they don't even recognize that Annabelle's there anymore because she wasn't born in 1930, so she could not have been there. And she gets, like, very upset at all of this, and she goes to leave, and when she touches the door knob, she gets electrocuted and dies.
Yeah. She gets destroyed. her husband is understandably distraught. Felix is like, yo, what the hell? And this is when Sapphire and Steel come in. They're like,
oh man, no.
he's like, oh man. Sapphire and Steel come in and they're like, yo, we're investigators. And he's like, so you can find out who killed my wife. And he's like, well, we already know who killed your wife, actually. And it's a little more complicated than that because it turns out time itself is killing your wife. Now, that may be a lot for you to understand. He's like, time killed my wife. Got it. He like gets it instantly. He's like, I'm on board.
I know they kind of make fun of him for the rest of the story, but like more so than any other character, he like has a head on his shoulders where he's just like, as soon as they tell him this stuff, he's first a little incredulous, but then he's like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna go along with this.
And they're like, so our names are actually Sapphire and Steel. And he's like, oh, wow. It's like, are there more of you? He's like, yeah, there's silver. Sapphire specifically mentions silver and lead as the, quote, more of them, unquote, that there are. Which are coincidentally the only two more of them that we've seen. So
right, but she also says there are other rogue, like, elements of time or whatever, which kind of makes you think that the creatures or beings or existences or whatever that they've been stopping every episode are like something akin to them.
Yeah, I also thought that they meant that maybe some of the elementals decided to go rogue and break away from whatever elemental continuum this is.
Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit of a faction wank going on here.
What?
You ever heard of faction wanking?
No.
It's when, stories get so heavily, like, divided into different factions and so concerned with what those factions are, like, up to and the allegiances and betrayals between and among them that it just gets funny. And when it reaches that level of hilarity, it's typically known as faction wanking.
Huh. Nope, can't say I've ever heard the term. Gonna be honest.
Well, now you have.
Great, I'll file that away in totally useful information that I'll use again.
You might, you never know. Anyway, they dub Felix Brass.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, he's an alloy. That makes sense. He's not an element. But then I was like, wait, never mind. Steel is an alloy. So.
Yeah, I just thought of brass as like, it's a lesser material. It's not really worthy. It's not up to...
Isn't brass, like, pretty strong?
Yeah, I mean, look, there was an age named after it, right? Or maybe it was a Bronze Age. I don't know, but whatever.
Brass and bronze are very similar. I think they're alloy... Now, I may be wrong, so I'm going to actually qualify this. I may be wrong, but I think bronze and brass are very similar alloys. I think one of them... I think bronze has copper in it. I don't remember anymore now. Let's just say the difference between them is like also like the content of carbon, I think, but they're very similar, which is why they're similar colors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, this is Brass, and he can communicate with them telepathically now. So it's 25-12, and so Steel is like, well, what if we go back to the office in 1980, find out where George was supposed to die, and then that way we can make sure it actually happens. Because it turns out the reason why everybody else is dying is because this time force is trying to make the house exactly as it was in 1930, which is why, Tony and Veronica and Annabelle and soon Felix will all die because they weren't at the house on June 21st, 1930.
Right.
So Sapphire successfully brings the office back to 1980, and Steel busts in and finds Anne there working like a dutiful assistant.
Right. He takes a glimpse, I believe, at the computer and finds out that supposedly McD died in the library.
Yeah, this is interesting because we actually got a shot of the computer flipping library and laboratory back and forth in like episode 3.
Yeah.
Just like kind of out of context, but it retroactively makes sense when you see this scene later on, so I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. So they go and investigate the library, but there's no trace of a fire or like a death or anything.
there's another unintentionally hilarious scene because Sapphire and Steel need to talk with, Howard, Felix, sorry. And so they telepathically tell him, they're like, hey, say you're tired and go to bed. And he just, as soon as he hears this, he slaps his card down on the table and goes, I'm tired. I'm going now.
Yeah, the acting on this actor's part, I don't know his name, was pretty good. I feel like for some actors, it's probably a challenge to like play a bad actor, but he does it.
He succeeds brilliantly. So episode 6, Sapphire kind of reads Steele's mind. Is like, shoot, the apparition tricked us because it swapped the word laboratory for library. So they're back now officially on June 21st, 1930, and they're watching the events play out. And this is when we find out that George was having an affair with Emma.
Yeah, didn't we? I might be wrong here, but didn't we get a hint of that earlier somehow? I don't remember.
Maybe I was completely surprised. So
yeah, because I remember not being that surprised. I don't remember if that was just because I wasn't surprised or if it was because they dropped a little hint of that in the dialogue somewhere.
Oh no, there was a scene where Emma tells George to come to her room.
Oh yeah,
when he's done in the lab.
Yep.
That was in like episode 4 or 5, I think. So yeah, I guess we kind of knew. We didn't know for sure, but we kind of knew something hinky was going on.
Oh right, yeah, and this is actually a direct follow up to that scene because it's George working in the lab, and then Emma comes in, and she's like, "Yo, like, what's up, George? Like, you said you would come, and you're still working here." And he's just like, "Yeah, I know, like, but so what?
This is important work, Emma."
I'm about to unleash a virus that's going to destroy mankind. Just leave me alone. No, I don't know.
God. Napoleon time. God.
Again.
Every time.
And she's like, well, fine then. Fine. And then she goes and does like... Well, first of all, this entire scenario is just messed up to begin with, but she does like something even more petty, which is she goes and awakens Felicity from in the middle of the night from a peaceful, sleep, and is like, "Hey, Felicity, guess what? George and I are seeing each other, and he's probably gonna get divorced from you and marry me."
Yep. And Felicity's like, that a-hole. I'm not going to let him leave. So she takes the gun, the one with McDee's name on, takes it down to the lab and pulls the gun on him, and Steele's like, this is when it happens, right? And Sapphire's like, no, Steele. Steele's like an over-eager dog. He's like, now. This is when it happens, right? Now. And she's like, no, Steele. So they let the scene kind of play out. Felicity leaves. George then goes to confront Maureen because he's like, yo, your sister, crazy. But also, like, this vaccine, gonna make us rich. But, like, you need to stop going behind my back. And he's like...
Well, he wants out of the deal because we've actually found out a bit earlier from the confrontation between Maureen and Emma that he basically just coerced McDee into signing this agreement to hand over anything he'd ever discovered and anything he would ever discover, because we didn't describe this, but McDee was actually not really Maureen's business partner. He was more just being used as this like scientist guy who had discovered some like pretty amazing things. So there's definitely sort of a power play in their relationship.
Yep.
So he wants out because he had just signed the contract, signing over everything to Maureen. But he goes and Maureen almost kills him over this.
Yeah, Maureen pulls a knife and he's like, George, don't you pull out now.
Yeah, I believe it's the same knife that what's-her-name got stabbed with.
Yeah. I think it is because Sapphire touched the knife and used her object detection skills to be like, many people have used this knife. It's been here since 1930. And this is when Steel also was like, now, right? And it happens now, right? And Sapphire's like, no, Steel. Then they go back to the library. Oh, yeah. Did you notice the huge size difference in the scene between George and Mulreen? Like, George looked like a solid 1.5 feet taller than Mulreen, maybe 2 feet.
Yeah, Mulreen was really short.
Okay, so that wasn't just me. I wrote down this note. I was like, either George is huge or Mulreen is tiny.
Well, they're all just like 7 feet tall, and Mulreen is just normal. No, I don't know. No, it's actually not true because Sapphire and Steel also like tower over Mulreen. So
classic Mulreen. Well, so they go back to the lab, and now Emma's there and is like, you said you were going to divorce Felicity from me. And he's like, well, things are more complicated than that. And it's like, oh, George, you need to stop. You need to just shut your mouth, George. Because then Felicity's like, I'll never let you have him. He's mine forever. I will never let him divorce me. And I'm like, you need to shut your mouth too, Felicity. Like, Emma's got a gun. You need to because she picks the gun up that Felicity left there earlier.
Right. Which she pulls it on Felicity, and we find out that how George McD died in the original timeline is that he jumped in front of the bullet that was meant for Felicity.
Yeah, but time freezes. Time freezes and Steele's like, no, you gotta kill George. And she's like, no, this time I'll get it right. And she takes like 3 steps to the left and then kills Felicity. And then everything starts going crazy. People are screaming. Steele's like, what have you done? You've literally doomed the human race. You absolute buffoon.
She explains that the being that she like contracted with promised her like a lifetime of happiness with George, and it turns out
this is like
go on.
Oh, so this is like some genie in the lamp loophole shit.
Yeah, it is. Because it turns out that lifetime is like under 24 hours because she just doomed the human race to extinction via a virus.
And Steele's like, you will literally die. Like, you personally will die, as will George, as will all these people. It's kind of interesting that the thing that sways her is the fact that she will die. Like, George dies within this 24-hour period either way. But now that the virus could get, whatever, the disease could get out and kill everyone, that would include her, and she wouldn't get her happy ever. She doesn't get her happily ever after in either timeline. But in the one of them, she gets to survive, so I can't...
Yeah, none of these characters were particularly good people, but I think of the bunch, Emma was probably the worst.
So then Emma fixes everything. They go. Sapphire takes time back, 2 minutes or whatever, and she shoots George. And then there's this hilarious. Okay, first off, number one, George just left this Bunsen burner on for the past entire conversation, which is like, already we know that George has no lab safety because this accident is going to kill the entire world. But come on, man, the Bunsen burner, like, really, dude. And when he dies, he conveniently falls forward onto the table, knocking the burner over, lighting the room on fire. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. And that's when Mulreen rushes in. So Mulreen...
He's like, oh, God.
Yeah, Mulreen, we actually found out earlier, never knew about any of this. Because there's that line when they were eating dinner where Felicity kind of threatens to reveal everything. Where she turns to Emma and she goes like, remember Emma, like, I know. And in that moment, you don't know what she's talking about, but once you realize that Mulreen doesn't know about the events that happened here, that's what she's talking about, is revealing that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why Mulreen records the death as a fire, because he thinks they all escape and George just didn't escape the fire and burned to death.
Right.
And then the story just literally ends.
Yeah. It's everything's saved and everything's back on the original timeline.
I guess everybody doesn't die.
They say things will go back to normal, once George dies, so...
Kind of weird that this time distortion only gets one shot at this. Like, the instant that Sapphire took it back and they fixed everything, like...
Yeah, this is like the one instance in fiction where like the villain has one chance of success. It's, instead of like the villain is bound to succeed and the heroes like only have a shot at this. It's the other way
Like
around.
Sapphire and Steel, the bad guys?
Yeah.
They are kind of godlike cosmic beings.
Yeah. They're definitely not like, your traditional heroes. Again, like we mentioned before, the only reason that they're out to save the human race this time is because it coincides with their job description of keeping time in check.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is also like, I know we said this week one that apparently assignment one was like the most unambiguously good ending, but like this is a pretty good ending. There's everything. I mean, yeah, these people suck and George McD has to die. Like there's no two bones about it, but like everything goes back to normal at the end of the story. So that's like the most close to. I mean, the same thing happened in assignment one, so that's like the most close to a good ending you're gonna get.
Right.
Besides, yeah, we kind of hate all these people. We're just in it for the petty drama between them, which is super entertaining.
Yeah, I was surprised how much I was entertained by the petty drama between them.
It's because I think Houghton and Reed do a really good job of not front loading all of it. Like in episode one, we have the drama between Emma and Felicity and Maureen, and then in episode two, we have Tony and Veronica arrive, and this is when we find out that like Tony's cheating on Veronica with Anne, and then in episode three, after Tony's, episode four after Tony's died, that's when we find out that Howard was blackmailing Tony. So it's not like that it's all front loaded in episode one. It like comes out over the course of the story, which I think helps keep every single episode interesting, because it's very easily they could have fallen into the trap where like all the drama happens in episodes 1 and 2, and then they just like dick around the house for 4 episodes until George McD has to die.
Definitely. This is one of those rare 6-episode serials in anything, including Doctor Who in this as well, that doesn't really feel like it could have been any fewer episodes.
Yeah, no, it works pretty spectacularly, in terms of pacing. And it really does work as a 6-part story. I think it is actually my favorite Sapphire and Steel story so far. I guess I suppose there's one more.
Yeah, I think it's either between this one and the last. It's between this one and Assignment 4 for me.
Sapphire and Steel has just been like on an upward trend for weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
Watch it. Watch Assignment 6 just suck. Watch it be the worst of the entire show. Just watch.
Well, I was going to say, so all the shows we've watched have been one or the other. So Star Cops, started out pretty strong and I think continually got worse. Children of the Stones started out, I think, pretty weak and ended on a really strong note. And Sapphire and Steel seems to be doing the same. We should mention that we're actually on season 3 now.
Yeah, because season 3 is just assignment 5 and season 4 is just assignment 6 because of the whole weird scheduling thing regards to assignment 6, which I think we'll talk obviously more about next week.
Wait, was it that? I thought there were just 3 seasons and it was just 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, assignment 6 is season 4.
Huh.
And the only story in season 4, and this is the only story in season 3, and that's because there was like a pretty big gap between assignment 5 and 6, I believe.
Huh.
Of like a year or more, so. And that was because of the merger of the reorganization of ATV into Central caused kind of the whole kerfuffle.
Right.
Because I think it was actually filmed pretty soon after assignment 5 and was intended to be aired. But because of the reorganization and they didn't know what to do with Sapphire and Steel, it kind of got lost. And then by the time they aired it, it was like they considered it a new season, but also like the final story, even though apparently it was filmed such that they could do more afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 2 things about that, I guess. One is that there's a slightly different intro sequence for this season.
I didn't notice, this is on you.
So it's just like a little different. It's not the Sapphire and Steel have been assigned intro. It's the little like call out of the writer and such. That one they do, and then they do like the pseudo cold open, and then they go into the intro proper. So the little mini intro thing has like slightly different music / a slightly different sound effect.
I actually want to say that I like subconsciously noticed something was different, but I didn't really like confirm it for
I
myself.
didn't confirm it either, so I could just be insane, but I'm like 99% sure it was different.
You're 99. Well, that's good enough for me. That's good enough for me.
I'm actually more like 75%, but hey. So, okay, the other thing about that actually is I know we're not done. We have more to discuss, but since we're talking about ATV and how that all worked, we actually got a little bit of info about that from Ian on Twitter. So I want to read what he wrote, and I think now is the most opportune time to do it.
All right,
So
sure.
let me pull that up because I didn't prepare and pull it up already.
I was thinking the other day that like the sometimes the haphazard nature of our show, one, the fact that we figure some things out like on air is in some ways I think like gives it a low budget charm, much like Doctor Who and Sapphire and Steel have. But also I realize it gives us a lot more transparency behind a lot of our decisions than a lot of other people than otherwise might be there. Since people literally get insight into our decision process since we do it on air so much. Which, say what you will about whether transparency like that is good or bad, but I guess it's just a thing that I was thinking about the other day.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like anything to say on that. It's just, like I said, just an observation, shall we say.
So, all right. So here's what Ian has to say. This is Ian underscore Nortcliffe on Twitter. So he says, "Hello, I'm just starting your pod on Sapphire and Steel and wanted to try and give you a bit of clarity on the ITV regions. ITV is independent television, the commercial rival to BBC. Unlike the BBC, which is funded by the unlike BBC, which is funded by the license fee, ITV was funded by advertising. ITV was like the overarching organization, and it was split into regions. Where I'm from, the region was YTV, or Yorkshire Television. All the regions would have their own regional news output and would make their own programs, some of which were only shown in the area. But others were shown across the whole of ITV, like one of the most popular soaps, Coronation Street, which was produced by Granada, which was the NW, I'm guessing Northwest region, based in Manchester, but always aired nationwide. I suppose the closest thing I could compare it to with my limited knowledge of American TV is network affiliates." So yeah, thanks Ian. That definitely helps, I think, us understand how this all works. It's still a little confusing, but I think I have a better grasp of it now.
Yeah, no, that helps a lot, I think. Yeah.
I was just going to say that puts Children of the Stones actually in better perspective for me, because they were part of like ITV West, which was their thing. I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, they were also part of HTV, right? And then we made that joke about H going to I because it was like one letter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying in America we do have like local, like news stations. We have like local news stations. So I guess maybe it's kind of like that.
Yeah, and I remember back when we were doing Zenith, a Blake 7 podcast, check that out. St. Clinton mentioned that he had originally watched Blake 7 on a local station that was in like the Bay Area, and that showed a lot of like sci-fi shows from the UK. That's like the station he mentioned. I forget what it was called, but it was local to them. So like we don't have it, even though we're also in California. We don't have that station that he was talking about. So
yeah, television is weird, man.
yeah, it really is. It's really damn complicated.
Speaking of weird and complicated, we got a lot of Britain's 10 actors this week. So,
all right,
dive right into that.
Yeah, you're going to have to take it away because I just looked up a random crew member. Not random, but I looked up a crew member for this because, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what I was doing.
All right, so first off, we have Patience Collier playing Emma Mulreen. She was in the 1971 Fiddler on the Roof movie.
Wow.
She was in The Avengers as well as those are the two most well-known things that I knew her from. She was also in a show called ITV Playhouse, which sounds like one of these children's shows that was on all the time, and then just a lot of TV movies that I didn't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Davy K as Lord Mulreen. He was in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as the Admiral. He was also in the 1972 Alice in Wonderland, which I know of but have never seen. He was also in Softly Softly Task Force, which I know we've mentioned before on this show. And that's pretty much it, actually. Not much else besides that for him. We have Nan Monroe as Felicity McD. She was in a David Copperfield adaptation. And then she was in a lot of TV shows. A lot of these people I actually noticed were in television shows that were TV series, but they did like plays. So like, she's here in damn, what is it called? Like the BBC Play of the Month.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've like Davy K was in the ITV Play of the Week. So that's interesting. I wonder if there was like a specific casting thing to get people who were potentially theater actors for this, because it is like very much kind of like a play, because it's inside a house on a set.
Right.
Anyway, that's it for Nan Monroe that I recognized. We have Jeffrey Wickham, whose name was credited as Jeffrey with an R-E-Y, but is apparently spelled with an R-Y. He was in... he was in Ali G in the House, which is the movie that Sacha Baron Cohen made before Borat, I believe, about his character Ali G. He plays himself in that. He was in the 1996 TV movie of The Ring. He was also in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which we just had someone else in that on Trust Your Doctor. He was also in Yes, Prime Minister. And again, Play for Today. Another play. He was also in Hammer House of Horror, which I know we've mentioned on... I think we mentioned it on Zenith. Someone brought it up to us. As a television show. He's also on ITV Play of the Week. So again, like... You know, also he was in Coronation Street. And he was on Doctor Who as Webster in The Reign of Terror.
Oh, wow.
Jeremy Child as Howard McD was still acting as recently as 2 years ago in 2018 in a TV show called The Little Drummer Girl. Never heard of, but he was in the Iron Lady, which was a movie about Margaret Thatcher in 2011. He was in Doctors, EastEnders. I think he, of everyone, has had the most prolific career post Sapphire and Steel.
Oh, wow.
Because he, like I said, he's still acting today. And a lot of things I don't recognize. So, also in ITV Playhouse. Interesting. Jenny Stoller, whose name was also misspelled apparently in the credits. She's credited as Jenny with a Y, but it's apparently Jenny with an IE, as Annabelle. She was in Causality 1909, which I only bring up because there's also like Causality Not 1909, which she was also in. And I think they're like TV series that are related somehow. BBC Two Playhouse, Play for Today, and that's it. She didn't have a big career. Peter Laird as Greville was in Doctor Who as Chang.
What?
In The Wheel in Space.
Oh. Okay.
I don't remember that character, but there you go. He was also in Z Cars and Play for Today and Causality. And that's kind of it. Stephen Howard as Dr. George McD was also the other like most prolific actor who's still acting this year. Apparently, he was in a short that came out this year called Entwined, and he's in a movie in post-production called Every Night and Every Day. Dang. So he was in Castle, the TV series with Nathan Fillion as that detective.
Yeah. Wow. He's got to be like in his 90s or 80s at the earliest.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Sapphire and Steel was his first role.
What?
Yeah. his first role. He played Dr. George McD, like the main character almost of the story. So
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, that's really weird. He's a pretty good actor.
well, maybe that's why he kept getting work.
Maybe he was a stage actor, because that's the same thing that we
Possibly.
had with the guy who played
Val
Yeah,
Pringle.
exactly, because he didn't have a prolific IMDb page, but then we looked it up and he had like a pretty big career outside of movies.
Maybe. Christopher Bramwell as Tony. Was in the 1988 Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And basically nothing else of note. He wasn't in a lot. Patricia Shakespeare's Anne Shaw. She was in Yes Minister, ITV Playhouse. She was in the TV adaptation of War and Peace. She was also in Z-Cars and Coronation Street. In the very first episode of Coronation Street, actually. And then Debbie Farrington as Veronica, the final actor/actress for this story. She was in Berger I don't know. You know. Also in BBC Two Playhouse. Also in ITV Playhouse. And Play for Today, and that's it. Oh, and Emmerdale. Mustn't forget that. And then that's pretty much it. That's all the actors and actresses.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Emmerdale because after Ian told us what I read aloud earlier, we actually got into a little sort of discussion about Emmerdale/Emmerdale Farm. And I found out that Fraser Hines and what's her name, who played Jenna on Blake 7, were actually the two leads on that show at one point. Sally Nivette.
Oh, yeah, I knew this somehow. Somehow.
Yeah. So just interesting there. But I guess that leaves room now for our next segment, which is, our costumes of the... Wait, are we still in the 70s?
No, we're in the 80s.
No.
This is 81.
No! Well, costumes of the 80s then.
Nice. Disco era. Oh, wait, no, that's the 70s. Counterculture. No, that's also the 70s.
Reaganomics. God.
Economic depression.
God. So, might as well start
Steele's got quite a fetching suit this week. Tux. He's got a tux,
yeah, so
actually.
He walks off screen for like a second and comes back in a tux with a mustache.
A mustache he grows off screen in 10 seconds. I guess that's one of Steele's secret powers. We haven't actually seen Steele use his powers since Assignment 1 when he throws things.
We haven't.
And maybe one of his secret powers is he can grow facial hair like real quick.
Man, Sapphire got all the cool powers and Steele is just like, yeah, so I can grow out this like mustache. I can lower my body temperature.
It's like the really benign or really useless superpowers.
But Sapphire, as usual, has a different costume. Before she gets transformed for the party, she's actually wearing sort of a blue dress thing, but it looks like it has like a twig and branch pattern on it, or like a twig with a leaf coming off of it, like a little clip art thing on it.
Yep. It looks great. It also looks much, much better than last week's outfit.
Not hard.
Yeah, not hard. Not hard at all. So, everybody else is wearing just like a suit. Well, then Sapphire gets a black dress, which I noted. I was like, that's a very pretty dress.
Yeah, it was sort of, black and blue. And then at some points in the story, it almost looked white gold. No, I'm kidding.
Get out.
No, it was pretty much just black. One thing I did want to mention that I thought was interesting, weird perhaps, was the Trump-like haircuts of most of the male characters in this story. Now, I don't say Trump-like as in they actually looked like, whatever Trump has going on top of his skull, but but like they had the same vibe, you know, like didn't they? Wouldn't you like combed over
You
like
mean the like comb
yeah, combed
over?
over like kind of odd, but in the color too kind of matches with like the wavy like comb over thing, you know, like most of the male characters had that going on.
Yeah, yeah. I did notice this. And yeah, it's pretty weird. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know why that was what they went for. Like I don't know why that was what they decided was going to be the design for the day, so to speak.
yeah, I have no idea. I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, well, glad you did. Now everybody will never be able to unsee that ever again. That's just ingrained in everyone's mind now. So thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I have nothing else left to say except that, wow, we only have 1 week left and then Sapphire and Steel is done.
Yeah, it went by quick. Which obviously we should have expected that because we did it such that it's only going to be 6 episodes. But yeah, I'm excited to see how this all wraps up, or if it's just going to be another random adventure.
Well, anyway, on that note, if you'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadavevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, events, love letters, your thoughts on the end of Sapphire and Steel. You can find us on YouTube at Decade of Vegetable. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be finishing up Sapphire and Steel with The Trap. But until then, the end.